Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us is Mark Sebastian, Chief Operating Officer of OptionPit, to discuss trends that we're seeing in VOLQ for the month of September, and of course, the historically volatile month. And Mark, it's so interesting. September is continuing to deliver as you would expect it to based on historical performance. And what's interesting with today, stocks are up nicely, but you have VOLQ, you have VIX, you have other volatility indicators moving higher along with stocks, which is typically not the fashion in the way they trade.
Yeah, well, we do get a little bit of weekend effect on Mondays, but you can't hide the fact that vol is going up and volatility is going up in upside calls. So, for instance, I'm looking at the triple Q 312 calls that expire on October 14th. So call it about the time frame that VOLQ is looking at it. And since Thursday night, implied volatility on that strike has slowly risen. It closed at about 24.5 on Thursday night, and over the last couple of days, it has gone up to 28.15. So a nice move higher in volatility on a strike basis as we've rallied the last 2 days. Points to two things. One, these rallies have been relatively strong, and two, that could be the market kind of starting to signal that it's starting to tire out, and we could be topping out.
You know, what's also interesting with September is we're in this vacuum of no earnings, right? We're only focusing on macro, and it's not just what's happening with Powell and the Fed and interest rates. Of course, geopolitics fits in there. We're still trying to manage through supply chain issues. There's just so much that's driving stocks either way because of the headlines, because there's really no corporate news to move on.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that we have a lot of unknowns, but they're known unknowns, right? We know we have inflation. We know we probably have a recession. We know there's war. We know Europe has an energy crisis. We know that Europe has a recession on their hands. We just don't know how bad any of those are going to be. So they're known unknowns. That's one of the reasons why maybe vol isn't as bid as traders keep expecting it to be. Why VIX and VOLQ are unable to push themselves through higher into the 30s or the 40s that I think a lot of people are watching. And another piece that I think is kind of interesting is one thing I like to compare is the relationship between VXN, which is based on VIX, and VOLQ, which is that at the money volatility. And we really saw we're at kind of some of the low points of that VXN versus VOLQ relationship, pointing that at the money vol is a little bid, but out of the money options skew does not have a big bid underneath it right now. And so there's just a lot of balls in the air, a lot of moving parts here, but traders are really concentrating on options that are near the money.
So Mark, when you look at different positioning here, does it look like it's more hedging activity or speculative activity? It's kind of one of those things where it is so elevated. Does it make sense to sell a little premium here to derive some income? Or are you seeing, you know what, we really don't trust this market, so we're actually buying more protection at this point?
Yeah, I think part of the reason for that bid and calls is that what traders are doing is unwinding their triple Q position and buying calls so they can continue to have upside, but take a lot of money off the table. That's, again, a good sign that there is, we might be topping out. Leading into last week, we had a huge put call ratio in CTAs and money managers where they were long a lot of puts. That's part of the reason for this big short squeeze that we've had over the last couple of days. That seems to have unwound itself. And now, as we head towards CPI, we're at a relatively neutral spot, and we could see a move higher or lower going forward. And like I said, with the type of activity we're seeing, would not be surprised to see us turn around in the next day or two.
All right, Mark, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.